everybody. It is great to see you. Welcome to North Shore. For those who are new around here or I haven't had a chance to say hi before, I'm Jonathan Wolfgang. I'm on staff here and thrilled to have you with us. Those of you online, of course, excited to have you with us as well. Many of you that were here last week or may know that this last week was when Scott and his wife Nina were expecting their little guy, and I am delighted to announce that on Tuesday, little Jude Scruggs was born. And he is a cute little fella and doing great. And I know they deeply appreciate your prayers. And everyone across here, yes. Sorry, back to me now. Sorry, it's a little kind of slopes off quickly there. But take the beard off me. I look very much like that. I just have to take my word for it. At least that's what I remember from years and years ago since I screwed this thing. But anyhow, they are enjoying some time together, and so it is such a joy for me to get to be here and be part of this series that we have been in. Last Sunday, me, along with 102 million of my closest friends, sat down Sunday afternoon and watched the Super Bowl. And there have been years when I care a great deal about the Super Bowl. Of course, when the Seahawks were in it a few years ago, and some of you know I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and so you're raised with certain loyalties growing up in that area, let me assure you. So I'm very tuned in when the Steelers are there and that sort of thing. But this was one of those years where I could not have cared less, quite frankly, about the Super Bowl. I'll just be blunt. Some of you are very into it, me not so much. And so, like so many other folks who still watch it, even though they don't really care about the game, I found myself far more interested in what? The commercials, right? That's the real reason many of the people in the world watch this. And whatever you thought, I don't know, I thought this was a great commercial year, personally. I thought the Groundhog Day commercial with Bill Murray was genius. I thought the Snickers kind of making the world better was a fun idea, some of those sorts of things. But there was one commercial in particular that aired between the first and second quarter of the game that really grabbed me. It totally caught me off guard, in fact. It didn't feature some big celebrity or some clever, funny twist or great special effect or design. In fact, it was a very simple ad when you think about it. And it was an insurance company ad, of all things. But for whatever reason, it grabbed me. And at the center of that commercial was this simple concept of love. Some of you may remember it. Here it is.
The ancient Greeks had 4 words for love. The first is philia. Philia is affection that grows from friendship. Next, there's storge, the kind you have for a grandparent or a brother.
Let's go.
Third, there's eros, the uncontrollable urge to say, I love you. The fourth kind of love is different. It's the most admirable. It's called agape. Love has an action.
This is good.
It takes courage, sacrifice, strength. For 175 years, we've been helping people act on their love so they can look back or look ahead and say, we got it right. We did good.
Well, I've seen that commercial a lot of times now, and it still gives me a little tingle. It's amazing. So many times I have sat in a room like this one, in a church, and I've heard a pastor stand up and elaborate, share the exact same content that they just showed in that commercial. Kind of pointing out from the ancient Greek, the New Testament is written in ancient Greek, these words for love that are used. Now, granted, most pastors didn't explain it in 60 seconds like that commercial did. It took them far longer than that in their case. But it unpacked these ideas of these different kinds of love. Philia, this friendship love. Or storge, this family love, this loyalty. Or eros, like the word we get erotic from, sexual love. And then this word, agape. Selfless, sacrificial, giving, unconditional love. Right there in the middle of a Super Bowl commercial, of all places. Now, do you know how much it cost to have a 30-second commercial in the Super Bowl this year? Have you heard? 30-second spots were selling for up to $5.6 million each. That's for 30 seconds. That commercial was a full 60. That means this company spent around $10 million to give people a crash course on the kinds of love found in ancient Greek, okay? And here's the question that we have to ask. Why? With all the different ad approaches they could take, why would a company spend all that money for a single 60-second commercial to try to attract customers to their business using the strategy of unpacking 4 words used for love in the Greek language? Now, there may be lots of reasons, but it occurred to me, could it be that this concept of love, agape, this sort of unconditional, true, others-focused love is so inspiring, so attractive, so appealing, so powerful that they thought it was the best way to grab people's attention and pull them toward them as customers. And I think they might be right. Now, I have no idea what that commercial is going to ultimately do for their bottom line, for their market share, for their assets under management as an insurance company. I have no idea. But there is something in all of us that is drawn to that kind of love. People are craving that kind of love in their lives. And if someone can help me experience just a little bit of it in my life, even if it is an insurance company, then I want to know more. See, I don't think there's a person alive who isn't drawn to that. And that's good news. Because at the center of our faith, at the center of what it means to be a Christian, to be a follower of Jesus, is this idea, love. In fact, one of our house rules is we love. We agape. We love unconditionally, sacrificially, selflessly. We love. And I don't care who you are, where you're from, what your background. It's that kind of love that everybody craves. We've been in this series over the last several weeks where we've been talking about some of these house rules, some of the values that matter to us, some of the things that define how we go about doing what we do, the things we believe God's calling us to be distinctive about in the way we live and the way we operate, these guiding values. And I've loved this series because I forget sometimes, I need reminded sometimes, and I've loved being reminded of these things that define who we are as a church. Because, just to be clear about this isn't just my job. This is my church. This is where my family and I worship and give and serve and grow. This is our community where we're being formed by God and by each other. I love this place. And I love these values that we've been talking about. For instance, we keep Jesus at the center. The whole point of all of this isn't me, isn't Scott, isn't anybody else in this room except Jesus. We keep Jesus at the center. We're here for those who are not here, we said. We dream big and pray bigger. We lead the way with irrational generosity. These are the ways we want to handle ourselves. We're contributors, not consumers. That's what we talked about last week. This week, we're going to talk about this. We love unconditionally. And then next week, we'll wrap up this series here. We practice what we preach. We walk the talk. We want to be, there are lots of churches. This is the kind of church I want to be part of. A church that does more than just hang these on the wall or occasionally give a talk from upstage or whatever on these things, to actually seek to live it out in our world that is so desperately searching. So desperately searching. I mean, even that Snickers commercial that I mentioned earlier from the Super Bowl, did you see it? The basic idea of that commercial is that this world is messed up. And maybe what it needs is a Snickers. Did you see it? That's what the solution was. Now, I like Snickers as much as the next guy. Actually, from the look of me, I probably like Snickers too much. But what this world needs, friends, is not a Snickers, right? What it needs is the hope and the healing and the grace and the love of Jesus. That's why this house rule that I want to talk about today, it's so important, so powerful. We love. We love unconditionally. We love without strings, without qualifiers, without limits, without reservation, without exception. We agape. We love. Now, this may sound strange to you, But it actually, I'm found, is very challenging to put together a message on love. Partly because there are so many beautiful texts, so many verses in Scripture that so beautifully describe love or call us to love or challenge us to love. As I kept reading and studying, I'm like, oh, I can't skip that one, it's too good. Or, oh, no, I can't possibly leave that one out. Pretty soon, all I had was page after page just of verses. Why is that? It's because from cover to cover, that's what this book is about. It's about love. It's about God's love for people. It's about His invitation for us as people to love Him back. It's God calling us to live a life of love and telling us what that looks like in the different facets of how we live. Again and again and again, this word and this idea shows up. The most famous verse in the Bible, you know it, for God so loved. That word is agape. In fact, it is in all of the verses we're going to look at here. For God so loved the world that He gave. He was selfless. He gave His one and only Son, that's Jesus, that whoever believes in Him, whoever puts their trust in Him instead of themselves, they will not perish, but have eternal life. For God so agape the world that He gave. Now, when Jesus was cornered, this one who was sent, hey, Jesus, tell us, sum it all up for us. What's the short, summarized version of what this whole message is that you come with? This is what He said in Matthew 22. Jesus replied, love, again, agape, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets, which were the major divisions of the Old Testament, this whole book, He says, it's all about that. They hang on those commandments. Love God, love people. Agape God, agape people. The Apostle Paul, who wrote most of what we now have as the New Testament, this is what he wrote in Galatians chapter 5. He said, the only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love, through agape. Not the only thing that counts is faith. Do you believe it or not? The only thing that counts, he says, is faith expressed itself through love. Again and again, hundreds of times, it talks about this love God has for us, this invitation to love God back, this way of life driven by and dripping with and defined by love. And this isn't just some optional upgrade for people who want to get serious about it. It is basic required equipment. Listen to what the Apostle John, the same one who wrote those words, for God so loved the world at the beginning, he wrote another letter later talking about love, and here's what he has to say. In 1 John chapter 4, it'll be on the screens, but here's what it says. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed His love among us. He sent His one and only Son into the world that we might live through Him. This is love. You want to know what it is? Here it is. Not that we loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. That's what happened on the cross. Dear friends, he writes, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another, he says. What's John saying? He says, you can't claim to love God and not love people. It just can't happen. It doesn't mesh. It's not true. So it's no wonder one of our house rules, one of the values we aspire to live by as a church and as human beings, followers of Jesus, is this. We love unconditionally. It's what we do. It's who we are because of who He is. But you know how there are some things in life that sound really simple and easy to do but are actually really hard? I wanted to ask you to try to do something. Both those of you that are here in the room and those of you who might be joining us online right now, if you're able, here's what I want to ask you to do. Lift your right leg off the ground and begin to roll your ankle to the right, clockwise, to the right. Everybody tracking? No, seriously, like play along. I want you to try this. This may be the most exercise you get all day, all right? Just roll your ankle clockwise to the right. And don't do it yet, but in just a minute when I say now, I want you to draw the number 6 in the air with your right hand. You understand? You're still rolling your ankle. In just a moment, when I say now, you will draw the letter 6 with your right hand. Everybody ready? Get in the position. You're still rolling your ankle? Now. What happened? What happened? Your ankle went the other way, didn't it? Can I tell you, I've been practicing all week. I still can't get it to stop doing that. Over and over and over again. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? It sounds so simple. But there's just something about it that looks easy, but is actually next to impossible to do. All right? Can I suggest love's not all that different? Now, some of you, the rest of this talk, are going to be sitting there practicing. I know the danger of using an illustration like that. You can practice later, okay? We have far more important matters to discuss together in the next few moments. But love is one of those things that sounds so easy to talk about and to do, but when it comes to putting it into practice, can be virtually impossible. It can be so hard. Why? Because some people are jerks. That's why. I mean, is that revelation to you? I don't think so, right? Some people are messy. Some people are hard. They're frustrating. Some people are difficult. Some people are mean. And as a result, some people, even if they aspire to show love in their lives, they take enough hits, they get enough frustration, they eventually reach the point where you might say they put a mat out before their life, they put out a message from their heart that says this: go away. Some of you'd like to have this at your front door, wouldn't you? Just go away. Go away. Leave me alone. You don't act like I act? Go away. You don't believe like I believe? Go away. You don't look like I look? Go away. You don't vote like I vote? Go away. Many people walk through their lives. This is the mat in front of their heart. Go away. Because people can be difficult, and God knows it. That's what makes agape so special. It's unconditional. It's love without strings, without conditions, without limits. It's a love that keeps on loving. Even when everything in us wants to say, go away, love says, come in. Come closer. Come nearer. Some of you already saw it. I heard you whispering. I know you did. Love says, come in. I want to get to know you. Let me begin to show you that you matter. See, this is the kind of love people long for in this world. And friends, it's the kind of love that God has for this world. It's the kind of love He wants to show us, and He wants to show others through us. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to go from being go-away kinds of people, as most of us are naturally, to being come-in kinds of people, as God would have us be? Well, just like in anything else that you want to get better at, you practice. There are exercises that grow muscles to these lines. And there's been some exercises that I've been thinking about, praying about, and trying to practice in my life for the last little while that I'd like to share with you that hopefully you might find helpful as well. Now, some people are easy to love. You don't need help with them. Now, everybody has their moments, of course. But there are some folks that are just sort of easy to love for one reason or another. But then the real hard work comes when you run across people who are hard to love. Chances are you have someone like that in your life. Don't point at them right now, all right? And as I've said before, if you don't have any people who are hard to love in your life, let us know. We have a whole list here at the church. We'd be happy to give you some of them to use for yourself, all right? But I want to suggest 3 little questions that you can ask yourself in real time, little cues, little reminders when you're in an exchange where you don't feel like loving who you're with. These 3 little cues can help you reframe what's going on. There's something I've been experimenting with, and I'm finding them very helpful. I hope you will as well. Here they are, 3 little questions. What do you see? What do you say? And what do you seek? Forgive me the cheesiness of them all being S words, but I want you to be able to remember this in a moment when the heat turns up, the adrenaline starts to flow, and what you want to say is go away. What do you see? What do you say? And what do you seek? Let's walk through these. First, what do you see? When you see other people, what do you see? Now, maybe you don't even see other people. Maybe you're just so absorbed in your own world, in your own phone, in your own life, you don't even realize there's anybody else around. The first step for you may be actually beginning to see, beginning to notice, beginning to recognize there are people all around you. But once you do that, once you actually look around, what do you see? There may be surface things you'll see. You may see how they dress. You may see the color of their skin. You may see the shape of their eyes. You may see their age. You may see their gender. You may see lots of things. But let me ask you this. What do you think God sees when he sees people? And there's a story in the Old Testament where people are evaluating others. And it's a long story I don't have time to tell, but the point of the whole thing, God says in this scene, I don't look at people the way you look at people. He says, I see beneath the surface. I look to the heart, he says. I see what's underneath. He looks deeper, beyond the image we try to present, beyond the masks that we sometimes wear. Nothing is hidden from him, friends. I believe when he sees people to be loved. I believe that's what he sees when he sees you. And quite frankly, I think some of you are here today because you need reminded of that. In a world that values us for what we bring, how we look, what we have, there is a God who looks and sees not the disappointments, not the shortcomings, not the failures. Those things are there, and he wants to work with them. What he sees is someone to be loved, someone that matters, someone to be treasured. I believe that's what he sees. He sees someone he wants to welcome home. And friends, if that's what he sees when he looks at you, that's what he sees when he looks to that person next to you, even that difficult person. He sees us as lovable. There is no such thing as an unloved human being. It's just a question of whether or not we'll receive that love, whether we'll soak in that love, whether we'll walk in that love. He sees us as lovable. Not because everything we do is lovable. Come on, who are we kidding? It's not. But because, as John wrote, God is love. It's not about who we are. It's about who he is. God is love. So he sees you. And he doesn't see you just for what you can or can't do for him, what you offer or what you bring. He sees deeper. Last week, I had the chance with a couple of friends to go down to a conference in Arizona, which is a good place to be at the end of January, incidentally, in case you weren't aware. Vitamin D in abundance there. But as I was at this conference inside, there was one of the sessions when the speaker was leading us in a time of prayer, and he had everyone standing, but he began to speak directly to those of us in the room who were pastors. I tell you, it can be a complicated thing to have your faith and your work so closely aligned. It can be easy to begin to derive your value, your lovability from how you're doing in your job. I know that's true in many careers, but it can be uniquely challenging when it comes to church work. And I was standing there, and this guy said something that it wrecked me. It caught me off guard. It may not seem profound to you. It may seem very simple, in fact. But he was leading us through this prayer time. And he said, some of you in this room are pastors. And I have this sense that some of you here need to be reminded that God didn't call you to serve him because of what he could get out of you. God called you because he loves you. Now, that may not sound profound to you. In fact, you may be sitting there thinking, that was news to the pastor? Like, wow, I'm not sure I'm coming back to this place, right? But for whatever reason, friends, can I just tell you, and I don't use these words often, my eyes erupted in tears. Because in that moment, I needed reminded that my value in God's eyes isn't based on how good or bad this sermon is. Some of you may be processing that right now. That's not how God sees this. He's not evaluating me on how well I lead this or that. He sees me as someone to be loved. And that simple truth began to do some healing in my heart that I desperately needed. He sees me as more than what I can do for him. And he sees you as more than your struggles or your strengths, more than what you bring to the table. He loves you. That's what God sees when he sees people. What do you see? You know, one of the secrets to learning to love is this simple prayer. God, help me see like you see. Help me see like you see. Here's what Jesus had to say about this whole idea. He says, a new command I give you. Love, there's that word agape again. Love one another. Here's the way I want you to do it. Here's the standard, he says. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. The same standard, the same grace, the same patience, the same kindness I show you, that's what I expect you to show one another. Maybe it's seeing that person you disagree with, not as an enemy, but as a human being loved by God. Maybe it's seeing someone different than you, not as scary or other, but as a lovable human being, treasured by God. Maybe it's opening your eyes to the reality that there are hurting people all around us every day. What do you see? Because Jesus says, when we begin to love like he loved, look what happens, something supernatural. By this, when you love this way, everyone will know that you're my disciples. I don't care what else you say, what shirts you wear, what bumper stickers you slap on your car. You want people to know who you are? They'll know it by how you love. If you love one another, he says. To love as he loved us. Not if you know the right things, not if you can argue your point better than other people, if you love like he loved us. So when you're in that moment, when you're face to face with those difficult people, what do you see? Then, what do you say? What do you say? One thing I keep discovering about myself is how much I like being right. You know what I mean? I always want to be right. It's a good thing that I usually am right, actually. I can say that because my wife's not here this hour. Don't tell her I said that, okay? Because she might feel otherwise. But I'll tell you, I have friends who believe radically different things than me. They think they're right too. You should see my social media feed. I mean, scrolling through that, it's like whiplash, okay? Back and forth. I have friends who post celebrating President Trump as the greatest thing in the world, right alongside people posting about Trump being the most evil human being to ever walk the planet. This last week, there were posts about the halftime show at the Super Bowl. Some were outraged by what they saw as sexually explicit or inappropriate. And then at the other end of the spectrum, people celebrating what they saw as a beautiful expression of Latin culture and female empowerment. Even though that was 3 years ago, I still have friends who can come to blows over whether this dress is blue or it's white. Do you remember this? But they'll still argue. Now, I have opinions, not about the dress. I don't really care about the dress, quite frankly. But I have opinions. And of course, my opinions are right. But what this world needs to know is not that I am right. What this world needs to see is Jesus. I'm not trying to show people I'm right anymore. I just want to show people Jesus. I'm trying to bring his love and his grace and his hope into every exchange, every conversation in my life. That's part of what it means to love unconditionally. So what do you say? The Bible has some pretty clear instructions on the kinds of things we ought to say. Look at this from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Can you think about how much of Facebook would just go poof if there was an Ephesians 4:29 filter you could turn on, right? Or make it a bit more personal. What about your posts? Or the things you say? Would they make it past this filter? What do you say? What do you say? Here's an idea. Maybe we don't have to say everything that's on our minds. Maybe it's okay to just shut up. To look for opportunities to bring Jesus, not conflict, not debate. There's nothing wrong with convictions and lovingly discussing them. Friends, sometimes the most powerful thing is to just learn to listen instead of demanding that you get listened to. What if instead of showing people we're right, we resolved to focus on showing people Jesus? What do you say? So, what do you see? Do we see people the way he sees us? What do you say? How can you use your words to encourage? And finally, what do you seek? What do you seek? What's your goal? What's your objective? When you see people, what's it all about? Is it about what can I get from you? You have something I want, so I'll be nice to you. I don't have any time for you. You don't offer anything. I'm not interested. Or is there a new goal? Is it to bring hope and light to people? To leave those we encounter better than we found them. What a beautiful way of life that would be. To leave those we encounter better than we found them. Listen to what the Apostle Paul writes about this in the book of Philippians. You see it on the screen. Here's what he says. He says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others." What if your goal wasn't just to focus on your interests, but truly think about the interest of others, to value others above yourself? Even that person who's hard to love, even that person who isn't like you, in humility, value others above yourself. Or this, from the most famous passage on love probably in the Bible. If you've been to a wedding, you've probably heard it. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. The love chapter, you remember? Can I tell you, that chapter has nothing to do with marriage. He's not talking about marriage in that passage. He's talking about agape. He's trying to explain what love looks like. And in that list, this is what the Apostle Paul writes. He says, "Love does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It's not driven by what can you do for me. Agape, unconditional love, isn't about me and my needs. It's about you and yours." That's why I think one of the best definitions of love is this. It's seeking the well-being of others. That's love. So what do you seek? Your own well-being or the well-being of others? See, instead of seeing other people who may be different than us, who may not seem to have things that we want, instead of putting out the mat to them that says, "Go away," what if we instead put out that mat that says, "Come in. You matter to God? That's good enough for me." You know, throughout the life of Jesus, one of the most beautiful things about him is how people that others had said go away, Jesus would say, "Come in." He got in trouble for it all the time. But he would invite those that others pushed to the margins closer and closer to himself. And he's called us to do the same, to be people, a community who say words that build up, who see as God sees and seeks the well-being of others no matter who they are or where they're from. That's what agape looks like in real life. That's the kind of love this world longs to see. And it's the kind of church we dream of being. The kind of people we want to be. A church that puts out the "come in" sign. No matter who you are, welcome home. I love to see the way that's happening here. And that's been the experience of my friend Gracie. A few months ago, Gracie reached out to us and said she wanted to tell her story. And so we sent a video team to sit down with Gracie. And we were so glad we did. And I think you will be too. Meet Gracie.
My name is Gracie Mae, and I've been attending North Shore for the last 6 years, and I want to share my story. I brought a guy here from Louisiana, and he was beating on me, and I never did receive any help from nobody because I figured he'll change. I was blinded by love, and now I'm paralyzed because he had beat me so bad that Harborview brought me back to life because my doctor said when I got there I was dead on arrival. But by the grace of God, God brought me back. And I will hope this helps for some of you women out there who's getting abused to get help while you can. When I came to North Shore, they asked me where I live, and they said they're gonna assign somebody to come and meet me at the bus and to push me in the church. And I felt so good, and it's so warm there at North Shore, and nobody didn't look down on me. They just looked deep in my heart and seen what kind of person I was.
What's your favorite song that we sing at North Shore?
My favorite song is when we start off in the morning. You know it. You sang it.
Yeah, sometimes we do one that says, heaven and earth collide, the Savior for everyone has come, bringing the dead to life, all for the glory.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I don't know all the words to it. Come on, let's sing. Heaven and earth collide,
The
Savior for everyone that's come, bringing the dead to life. All for the glory of His name. Mr. Jim, he like that. Mr. Jim, who take care of me, me and him, we be singing it together. I love that song.
You know, I want to be part of a community like that. And Gracie, it's good to see you. And thank you for having the courage to share your story. Gracie's here with us, so thank you, Gracie. And let me say, part of why Gracie wanted to share her story is because sometimes when we talk about this thing, love, people get it all confused and they let themselves be mistreated and beaten even, abused. And when they hear about this unconditional love, they think, well, I guess that just means I have to take it. There is nothing loving about abuse, either inflicting it or accepting it. And so let me just say, we want so badly to help you. If you're in that place where this idea of love is being twisted to put you in danger or to cause you harm, we've got this resource at North Shore we call our Domestic Abuse Response Team. And I want you to call and let us know so that we can help. There's that number. And if you can't remember the number off the top of your head, remember DART, Domestic Abuse Response Team. And you call our church office and you just say, hey, I'd like to talk with those DART folks. And they'll transfer you and connect you, and we want to help however we can. We're anxious to help. In the video, Gracie mentioned Mr. Jim. And he's a volunteer here at North Shore who week in and week out meets Gracie in the lobby, and brings her into this room, worships with her, sings with her, learns with her. It's called agape, friends. And don't you think our world could use more of it? And don't you want to be part of it? I want to be part of it. I don't know about you. A place and people who, instead of saying go away, says come in. No matter where you've been, no matter what your struggles, no matter what your regrets, no matter what your story, come in. Come discover this beautiful love that is more than a marketing strategy for an insurance company or some elusive pipe dream that we wonder really exists. Come discover there is a God who reaches out with that kind of love. And instead of rejecting, instead of shaming, instead of shunning, instead of saying go away, he turns the whole thing upside down and says come in. Not only come in, but I'll step in, he says, to the pain and the mess and the brokenness of this world that even a giant Snickers can't fix. Even when we said get away, he still stepped in. You see that song that Gracie was singing, Heaven and Earth Collide. That's exactly what happened when that baby was born in Bethlehem. And he grew up to teach and to heal and to ultimately die on a cross for every single one of us. He displayed, he defined what love is. Unconditional agape love. He set the standard by offering himself for all of us. And he gave us a gift. Not just the gift of that grace, but the gift of a reminder. One that he told us to come back to again and again, because he knew in a world where what passes for love often comes with strings attached, is often shallow and conditional, has limits, he knew we'd be reminding that his love is altogether different. So he gave us a little meal. Simple symbols of bread and juice to remind us, to fuel us, to show us, to sustain us that we are loved unconditionally. Some of you are here today because you need reminded of that. You are loved unconditionally. But it's not just the love that he has for you, it's the love he wants to show through you. That's what this meal is about. So as ushers get into place right now and begin to get ready, they're going to pass a little tray that has some bread and some juice, and you can take it as it's passed when you're ready. And as they pass it, as we eat it together, we're going to sing that song that Gracie was just singing about when heaven and earth collided and everything was turned upside down. When Jesus reached out with this simple invitation and said, come in, come let me love you. Come in. So will you bow your head with me? Let's pray about this. Oh God, thank you for stepping in, even when we were saying go away. Thank you for opening the door for us, putting out the mat, welcoming us home, and inviting us not only to experience this love for ourselves, but to let it flow through us. God, I believe there are people in this room who, for whatever reason, have just never opened their heart to you to say, come in. The idea of loving with this kind of selfless love, it seems impossible. And it is without you in us. And so, God, for those in that place, Lord, I pray and I ask you, I say, if that's you, I would love to talk to you after the service just to pray with you, talk to you about what this love looks like. But for those of us who claim to have been touched by this love, to receive this love, we have the opportunity to share this love with a world who desperately needs it. So God, I simply pray that you will help us to see like you see, and to say the things you would say, and to seek the well-being of others just as you did by sending your Son for us. God, I thank you. I want to seek you first, Lord, because you sought me. New life, because of your love. I love you, God. I thank you. Pour that love out through us. This world needs it. And I ask it in the name of Jesus. Amen.